Spider-Man Miles Morales isn't just a port of the PS4 version. It's a testament to what the future of gaming can be on the PlayStation 5. Pushing Insomniac's proprietary engine with ray tracing at almost every turn, a nearly locked frame rate across both modes, impressively detailed surface maps and textures, and in fidelity mode, it's all at native 4K. Everything in Spider-Man Miles Morales shows that Insomniac hasn't been resting on their laurels and have instead been pushing their engine's technology to the next level, putting the PS5 to the test. One it passes with ease. This is my technical analysis of Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's been impressive seeing what the first games can do on these new consoles, and one of the newer pieces of technology that's getting a lot of buzz, and rightfully so, is ray tracing. And in Spider-Man Miles Morales, it is everywhere. It's on buildings, in puddles, on cars, and it's even turned on when you enter photo mode on the PS5.
This is crazy tech.
There is no escaping it on this next-gen console, and it's truly stunning. It does so much to make New York appear that much more breathtaking. The technology they used in the past was largely screen-spaced reflections, and it works well for the PS4 Pro, standard PS4, and even the performance mode. But when you start looking at the PS5 fidelity mode side by side with even the PS5's performance mode, you get an idea of what you're missing out on with it turned off. It does a tremendous job of making each scene pop. As a person who's always preferred a higher frame rate, this is one game where you might find yourself truly torn. I've placed the fidelity mode side by side with the 60 FPS performance mode here and slowed it all down to 20% speed to show the difference. There's a true fluidity that you simply lose out on when zipping across New York City on fidelity mode. Selfishly, I want it all, but at the end of the day, this isn't a game where you need the frame rate to enjoy it. You should definitely give it a try for web slinging, but it drops the visuals like ray tracing while still keeping much of the impressive lighting improvements only available on the PlayStation 5. From my measurements, performance mode is doing a great job keeping close to native 4K with dimensions around 1728p, and I found a few higher, so you're not losing much resolution for the frame rate. But ray tracing, when you're on the ground or in an internal area, it just pops right out and wows you. Here's what Insomniac's core technology director Mike Fitzgerald had to say about their 60 FPS performance mode and the choice it gives players.
So we have a temporal solution that we've used for a number of years. And yeah, it's a frame-to-frame temporal method, and we use lots of information about where things are on the screen, how fast they're moving. And that lets us upscale very nicely to 4K. We have a really good method of blending between the resolutions when they flip, so you don't notice it. What that lets us do is really prioritize the frame rate over the resolution. I think the performance mode can go up to just under a full 4K, and then down into the 1700s. We've heard so much of, it's a really hard decision, but I think that's probably a good thing because it means we're giving different options for different, types of players. You hear some people are like, I'm definitely doing the ray tracing thing, and others are saying, no, I'm definitely doing the 60 frames per second thing. So it's nice.
SSR, or screen space reflections, are still used on all the other platforms, and it's implemented quite well. One place all modes use that is on the water, and you'd have to be looking really close to see the reflections disappear in the distance as you're zipping past at 70 miles an hour. And on Windows, the cube maps as you climb up are slightly more noticeable, as on occasion they won't reflect something like the giant Avengers building behind me. But again, you don't notice any of this unless you're making an analysis video like I am, so the SSR does a ton to make up for what you're missing out on at higher frame rates, or on older consoles. Speaking of frame rates, that same 33 millisecond and double frame issue crops up again, and it's present on all versions of Spider-Man, even the PS5 version at native 4K, and on performance mode. Here's what Insomniac had to say about this frame rate issue.
One thing we do is we're really careful about camera cuts. We want to make sure you don't see cloth pops and things settling and things popping in afterwards, or any of the simulation type stuff that you usually do frame to frame. We don't want to do the camera cut and then have things be in a bad state, right? So a lot of what we do is pre-camera cut, simulate all the cloth in the scene for an extra frame or two, let some lighting settle and try and do it all behind the scenes before we show another one. And I bet there's some cuts in there where there's, we've ramped up a lot of the amount of cloth we're using in the game and stuff like that. And I'm almost certain that's what is happening there.
And while you see these flutters in my analysis, it's literally one frame between camera cuts, and it's nearly imperceptible during gameplay on all platforms. The thing that surprised me even more is that from the base PS4 up through the PS5, they've achieved an almost locked 30 frames per second when you're web slinging in the open world, and if you choose to play at 60 FPS on the PS5, it's going to be locked at 60, and it's going to stay there. But if one platform struggled to stay there, it was the base PS4. The color range seems to be quite reduced, and while web slinging through the open world, you only saw minor drops that you don't notice as you play, but they're there, so I'm calling them out. Regardless, no matter what platform you would play on, it seems that Insomniac has pushed every pixel they can to give you the best experience your hardware can offer, and that deserves kudos. If you're playing on the PS5, native 4K at 30 frames per second is simply stunning. Here's what Insomniac had to say about developing for the PS4 versus the PlayStation 5.
Yeah, so part of our work on this game was building in a robust sort of scaling system to have stuff run on all the different types of hardware. We have a lot of PS4 players on the base PS4, on the PS4 Pro, and we really wanted this game to be an awesome example of, tech on that hardware as well, and not only look at the PS5. The PS5 let us do more dynamic lights, obviously the ray tracing stuff that it's been focused on, but really just more nuanced dynamic lighting in general. And our lighting artists spent a lot of time in there saying, okay, we can turn these ones on for the Pro and these ones on for the 5. And okay, we need to compensate with this on the 4 if we don't have that in. And then HDR comes up, so there's all these different combinations of things. And we have some tools to help them manage that.
Diving into some other technical aspects of Spider-Man, we can take a look at the character models on the PS5, which promise to have improved skin shading and spline-based hair, so it moves more naturally.
Actually, the fur coat that Miles has on the subway in the opening is a really good example of this. That actually uses all the strand hair, and as you watch him walk around, you can see all the strands simulated.
The city also has several improvements, including more characters on screen at any given time and a longer draw distance. I was able to catch their LOD system in action at a few points, like on this long city street. Their system is quite genius, actually, as they revealed what's going on the PS4 version. The further away you get from the camera, the lower the level of detail gets for everything. If you happen to be walking along the ground and you squint, you'll notice it, like with these buildings in the distance that transform to a higher level of detail as you get closer. In addition, another genius tactic is how they delay loading the higher resolution items and things that aren't needed as you swing through the city. It's all delayed in the pipeline as you're swinging, but when you land, it all starts loading in, as outlined during their GDC talk. But as a normal player, you don't notice any of this happening, and that's by design. It's kind of the magic of what Insomniac does. The added motion blur, chromatic aberration, and film grain all works together to make the game look more like a film. And now they've continued adding to all that with ray tracing, improved character models, and new technology on the PS5 that allows them to expand what they can render in any given scene. And the loading times are next to nothing when compared with older platforms. So all that means more textures, more people, more cars, more tech, and higher levels of detail in each scene. I will say this though, no matter what platform you play on, even the base PS4, the game runs quite well, but the PS5 fidelity option should not be missed, especially if you want to see everything an engine like this can do for an open world game. The frame rate option is also impressive. Insomniac nailed everything here. Spider-Man Miles Morales sets an impressive standard for open world games on the PlayStation 5, and all the other platforms. This is my second performance analysis piece for IGN, and I hope you liked it. I've been working to make better comparisons for IGN, so if you like this one, consider checking out my look at Gears 5 and the technology they've implemented to make it run at 4K 60 frames per second with the Xbox Series X. These take a ton of time and research for me to do, so with all honesty, just thank you for watching. Stay tuned for my next performance analysis across both next-gen platforms, where we'll focus on a certain Megaton shooter I'm sure you all love.